Hi, my name is Brian Batista. I'm a VR researcher and videographer at the Reese Innovation Lab at UNC Chapel Hill. I'm here today to show to you guys what my favorite software is that I've been using lately for some projects inside the lab and also some personal projects for myself. It's a 3D modeling animation software called Blender. Now, if you want to download Blender, the easiest way to do is just to go onto Google here and type in Blender. And this will redirect you to the website blender.org. So here we are on the Blender website, and you want to click on this download button here. Should be on the top bar as well if you don't see it. So you have this download right here. So you want to click on that, and then you can choose from whatever operating system you have on your computer. If it's Windows, if you're not Windows, if it's Mac or Linux, you can just click here. Or you can even download this through Steam right here. So if you use Steam for gaming, you can just grab Blender from Steam. It's not always the latest update on Blender, but it's really useful just to use it from there sometimes, if you really like it. Alas, I'm going to hit here, download Blender, and then it will download Blender right here, executable file. After it's downloaded, you just want to install it, and then I'll see you after you install it. Okay, once you downloaded and installed Blender, we're going to do is open it up. So I'm going to open up Blender for the first time as well. And this should be the screen you're seeing right now in front of you. So it's going to have the version of Blender you're currently running on right here in the top right corner, name of the software. And then it's going to have all these different types of files you need to create. But we're not really going to work on that right now. So what we're going to do is just click outside of this box right here. And before I start, I'm going to turn on my screencast keys so you're able to see whatever I'm using on my keyboard or clicking on my mouse. So it's going to be, for example, if I left click here on the scene, you're going to see left mouse right here, which means I clicked on my left mouse. Or if I press A on my keyboard, it will show that I pressed A right here. So at any point in the tutorial, if you're lost on what I'm doing or clicking, it will be on this left corner right here, exactly what commands I'm using. So it's a lot of information on these 3D modeling software, so we're going to break it down really quickly and make this easy. Top left corner here, you have your basic top menu, which contains File and Edit. On File, there's New to create new types of files for yourself. Usually I just use General. I don't really meddle too much on the other ones. You can do Open to open your recent files you've been working on. So these are some of the projects I've been working on lately. Or you can just open another file for yourself. And then you can Save and Save As. The basic top-down file menu. Import and export are also beneath the file part. Edit allows you to undo and redo stuff, and you can see your whole undo history or your redo history as well, which helps a lot if you're redoing something a lot or undoing and you want to go back to a specific step. You can just go to undo history and do that. I'm going to skip render, window, and help, basically because render and window we're not going to use too much at all actually in this tutorial, and help just takes you to support or tutorials online, but you can also do the same thing just by going to YouTube. On the right side of the screen here, we're going to have our outliner window. Now this basically tells us everything that's on our scene. So a Blender basic scene comes in with an environment tab that has a camera and a light and a default cube to it. Most people just will kill this default cube, and we probably will as well. Unfortunately, poor boy. But basically what you want to do is whatever you left click on one of these, you're selecting the object. So if I want to select the cube, and you can see this orange outliner here on the cube, that means the cube is selected, and whatever I'm doing applies to this cube. If you want to select the camera, just left click on it, or the light, same thing. If you want a multiple selection, you can just hit either shift or control. So you press and hold shift, click on the camera, and now I select the light and the camera at the same time. Do the same thing with the cube, hold shift, and now I selected the light and the cube. If I select all three of them, I can either hit A on my keyboard, select everything, or just go individually, press and hold Control on my keyboard, and click, click. On the bottom part here, we have our Properties tab. These will be basically whatever you're selecting, it will show the properties of that object or camera or light or whatever else you have on your scene. So let's select the cube for now. And you're going to have here under your object properties the location of the cube on the scene, its rotation, and its scale. And you're going to have a lot more options here, including the part where you go to an active tool, so you can change the kind of tool you're using, or you go into your scene rendering, and then you can change the type of render engine. This is a lot, and we're not going to go too deep into this, but basically you're going to have properties here, so you can add different modifiers, and these are a lot of options for yourself to choose around. But you can put these on your cube. You're going to have particle systems, you're going to have physics enabled. It's a lot of stuff to meddle around with. We won't dive too deep into this, so don't worry about it being a lot of information. It will be very simple to follow along. On the bottom part of your screen, you're going to have the animation tab, and I'm going to just drag it upwards a little bit. So wait until my arrow split into two and just pull this upwards. So this is the animation tab. It works as keyframe animation, so you do something on one frame and then you drag this further and then you change this another time. We're not going to delve into animation today, so don't worry too much about this. I'm just going to pull this all the way down again right here. And here is the middle of the scene. This is a 3D viewport space. This is where all the magic happens, and this is where we want to focus on. So right now we can see the cube here. This little pyramid thing is the camera, and this little round little circle is the light. So what I want to do is look through the sphere to the cube through the other side. So on my mouse, what I'm going to do is press and hold the middle mouse button. And you can see middle mouse on the left corner there. And I'm just going to drag my mouse to the left. And then you're able to rotate your scene around just by doing that. So middle mouse button and then drag your mouse to the left, to the right, up, or down. And you're able to rotate around. Let's say you want to zoom in and out of the scene. That way you're going to use the scroll wheel. So if you're using a touchpad, you can just press with two fingers and put up or down. Or if you have a mouse, you're going to have a scroll wheel on it. So you can just scroll up or you scroll down. So zoom in for up and zoom down for zooming out. Scroll down for zooming out, sorry. My mouse is a bit janky, so sometimes it does inputs on the opposite direction, but alas. Now let's say I have something that's outside, so let's say there's a cube there, and I can't really see it. I need to pan around my scene. So what you're going to do is hold shift on your keyboard, click your middle mouse, and just drag it. Once you drag your middle mouse, if you just hold shift and pull it up, down, left, right, you drag the scene that way and you can pan. So this is the basic movement of the camera. And this is what we're going to be doing the entire time, is using your middle mouse to rotate around, and then shift to pan, middle mouse, shift, middle mouse, shift. That's pretty much all the movement we're going to be using in this tutorial. So now that we covered movement inside Blender, what we're going to do is start selecting a cube. So the first thing we're going to do is left click on top of the cube right here. So now that it's selected, you can see this orange outlier right here on the cube. That means this object is selected, and we can try moving it around to see what we do. So to move something in Blender, it's not the M key as you would imagine, but it's the G key for grab. So we're going to press the G key once, and you can see the outlier change to white. That means you've grabbed that object. So we're going to be able to move it around and place it anywhere in our 3D environment. Now, let's say I don't want to move it, I'm doing this by accident. You can just right click on your mouse, and the object will snap back to exactly where it was. So whenever you're doing an action and you regret doing that action midway through, you can just right click on your mouse, and that will cancel the action you're currently executing. So let's say I want to grab this on and just move it in one direction. Most programs you've probably used before, just you can press shift to kind of make it apologies. So most programs you used before, probably you can just press and hold shift to move something in one direction. So you can just press G here and then one of the axes. So let's say on the X axis, this red one, we can just move it on the X axis right here. Let's say I want to move the cube on the y-axis, which is the green one. So I'm going to press G, Y, and move it on the y-axis. And the same thing for the z-axis. So G, Z, and this is on the z-axis. Now, see that your cursor, it can only go to one side of the screen, but once you go past it, it loops around to the other side. So it's here, and then it loops around to this side of the screen, and just keeps pushing. So you don't have to stop once you reach the edge of your screen. You can just keep going in one direction. It should be fine. Besides grabbing, what else can we do in Blender? We can rotate stuff. So if you press R on your keyboard, yes, this one is more intuitive. You can rotate something. Now rotating this freely, you can see it rotates on a free axis. So it rotates on the X, Y, and Z at the same time. But usually people, when they're working with Blender or any other modeling software, you don't want this to be free rotation. You want to rotate pretty accordingly to one of the axes. So I'm going to rotate this on the x-axis. So R, X, and it rotates on the x-axis. R, Y on the y-axis. R, Z on the z-axis. Should be a pretty simple tutorial by now. Now, same thing we're going to go for is select the cube again, press S for scale, and just drag your mouse outwards. And that will scale the object up, or if you drag it inwards, it will scale it down. The amount you're dragging your mouse is defined for where your mouse is when you click the button. So if I click my scale button here, I don't have much space to scale it down, but I have a lot to scale it up. And if I click it here, it's easier to scale it down, a bit harder to control the scaling up. So just be wary of where your mouse cursor is whenever you try to do something. That will define a lot of your movement. Same thing for scaling on the x-axis. So S, X, pull, S, Y, pull, S, Z, pull. Perfect. This is the basic thing you're going to do in Blender is move stuff around with G, rotate it with R, and scale it up with S. And that's the basic part of Blender that we're going to do with object interaction today. Now, something important about moving your scene around is sometimes you really need that like side view of an object. So I'm just going to go back on this cube and make it normal again. Now, let's say you want to see it perfectly from the side, and it's really hard to kind of line up your view here and make it perfect. So Blender has a really neat hotkey for that. It's called the Alt movement. If you press your Alt button and you hold your middle mouse button down and drag, you'll see the view snaps to the side here. So I'm just looking at this in the Z and Y axis. So the X axis should be coming towards your monitor here. Let's say you want to see this from the top. So press and hold Alt, middle mouse button, and scroll down. And now I'm seeing this from the top here. So you can see the Z axis is going through my screen, Y, and X. Whenever you get lost in your view, look here for the orthographic display. It will tell you where your axis coordinates are, and it helps you a lot through like looking through them. You can also just press on these axes to kind of go around and see wherever you have your axis, and then you can see through that view. But alt scrolling is probably a lot easier sometimes, just because you're moving around, snap, snap, go back to moving normally. So alt snap to move, and without alt to see it in free rotation. So now we're going to go into a little something that I don't really use that much in my day-to-day life, but it's really useful in certain situations, so I might as well cover it now. Let's say I want to see this cube from the front, but also from the back side at the same time. Now with one window it's kind of hard because you have to like look here and then look there and kind of think about it. Well, Blender makes it really easy to make new windows. So in Blender, if you come with your cursor to this little gray darkened area between the outlier window and the main view 3D port, you see it had a little like crevice here. I'm gonna click on it and drag. And that makes a new window for me. Now this window is completely independent from the first one. So I can look at my object from here and then from the bottom. And that's fine. And I can still look at my object here and move it, and it will move accordingly to the other one. Now these are still the same same space you're working with, the same objects, you're just seeing these in different windows. Now let's say I don't need this window anymore, how to close it, and this is really not intuitive, but it's really good to explain. You just do the same thing you would do to create a new window, so click on the crevice, but then you drag backwards. Ooh, that was not it. Let's try again. Click on the window, there we go. And then drag it towards where you want to collapse. So you see the little gray arrow now? So I'm collapsing this one. And one more time. There we go, back to our normal viewport. So let's do something. Let's grab this cube, move it a little bit on the y-axis, and let's make a new object here. So first thing I'm going to do to add stuff, you're going to press Shift, you're going to press and hold Shift, press A, and you'll come to this Add menu. So you have Mesh, Curve, all of these things. We're just going to work with Mesh today. Let's make a little cylinder. So you create a little cylinder here, and you can't really tell its size. Blender has a way of showing you with a scale on the grid here, but there's an easier way. Whenever you add something, and only when you add something, you have this little context menu on the bottom that shows up called Add Cylinder. Just gonna click this, and now you have all of these options here. Let's see if I can. Yeah, I can't really drag this to show. But you have all these options here, but amazingly, you can change the number of vertices your cylinder will have. So you can do down to 3 and pyramid, triangle, cylinder, whatever you want to call it. Just gonna leave it at 32, should be fine. You have the radius of your cylinder and you have the depth, or basically its height, right? You can also just change this by scaling the object up or down, but this should be fine for now. I'm gonna make a 4-meter depth cylinder with a 0.5 radius, right? And it looks nice. We can move this. Can press again Shift A, and then let's add a monkey. So Blender gives you this little monkey mesh, which is adorable, and it lets you kind of play around and you can see what you can make with Blender using its tools. It's really cool, it's really simple, and the monkey has been the base of several projects that I've made before just to test stuff out. So it's a really cool thing that keep in mind that you have here. You can change the size of the monkey as well. Its rotation, move it around. Okay, so I'm just going to delete all of these so we can actually start our old well. So I'm going to press and hold Shift and click on all of these objects. So they're all selected. I'm going to press X on my keyboard, and then I'm going to press X. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to press Enter again. And we delete all of our objects. So let's get started with an old well, shall we? So first thing you're going to have to do whenever you want to model something is pick a reference. So right here on the screen you can see some photos of the old well I have collected over the years. Some of these I actually shot myself. Some are from friends I've shot, and some are just from UNC's page. But you can see how the old well is made, and it's a really simple, basic architecture if you think about it. So you basically have 2 really small height cylinders on the bottom, which are the base of the old well. You have these columns, which are nothing more than, cylinders that are very tall, yet not really thick. So 6 of those. And then you have that dome on the top, which is nothing more than half of a sphere. We're going to literally be using those 2 shapes to make the entire old well. We're not going to make the drinking fountain in the middle. That will be a little bit more advanced, so don't fret too much on that side. So let's start with the base of the old well. So I'm going to press Shift A, go into Mesh, Cylinder, and now I'm going to make this 32 vertices should be fine. I'm going to pull this down to 16 so we can make this really low polygon count and make it a really light file for you guys. So the radius, I'm thinking the old well is about 4 to 5 meters big. You can make this as small as you want though, just keep it consistent. And the depth is pretty short, I would say about 0.5 meters the first base of it. That sounds about right. I'm used to using meters, not feet, so apologies for that. But we should be able to keep this going. Blender allows you to change the measurements to feet, from meters to feet if you'd like. I can't cover this right now on this tutorial, but you can just look it up and it's really easy to find. Okay, so this is our first base. So the second base goes a little bit on top of it, but it has to be the same the same proportions at least. So what we're gonna do is just duplicate the cylinder. So on your keyboard, hold Shift and press D, and then nothing really changed. But if you look at your outliner, you have cylinder, which is the first one we made, and now cylinder 001, which is the second one. So to show that to you, I'm gonna press S, I'm gonna click on cylinder 001, press S to scale, and just pull it down a little bit. And then you can see, you kind of see this yellow orangey outline inside our first one. Well, let's press grab G, and then I'm gonna press Z to pull it only upwards. And oh, there we go. Hello. That's a little bit too short. I need it a little bit taller, so I'm gonna press scale again on the Z axis and just pull it up a little bit. That sounds about right. Now I think I made it a little bit too short, so I'm going to make this a little bit wider. So if I just scale it up, it will also scale on the Z-axis, which is not really what I want. I just want this to scale on the X and Y-axis. So what I'm going to do is press S to scale, and instead of just pressing X and then, scaling on the Y and praying that I get the constraints properly, no. What we're going to do is press S to scale, hold Shift and press Z. Now you're removing Z from the scaling by doing this, so you're only scaling on X and Y at the same time. This is an amazing useful tool, and I've barely used it myself until I started learning Blender, and this changed my life when I learned about it. So I'm just going to put this here, grab it, and bring it a little bit more upwards. There we go. That looks pretty. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to make one of the columns, because this is the base of our cylinder. So Shift A, Mesh, Cylinder. Now again, it made another cylinder, 002, but this one, let's change a little bit. So I'm going to make this still 16 vertices on my cylinder, but the radius has to be a lot smaller, so I'm saying 0.25. Yeah, a bit too small, let's say 0.5. Okay, that sounds about right. Now the height of this is a lot taller. I want to say about 3 meters tall. Maybe 4. Yeah, sounds about right. Now let's drag this upwards. So G, Z. Okay, that looks good. It could be a little bit taller though. So S to scale, Z, drag it up a little bit. I'm gonna use my side view here to, kind of eyeball it. Yeah, that looks about right to me. That looks good. So now I need to move this only on the plane. I don't need to, it's already kind of attached here to the top cylinder. I don't need this to kind of float off and just, go here and have all the space between it. So we're going to use is grab G tool and then Shift Z to keep it on the plane. So again, G, Shift Z, and I'm going to move this. Actually, you know what? Brian is being dumb. We can just press G, X, and pull it right here. I think a little bit less, right guys? Yeah, this sounds about good. Okay, that's one. And I'm going to just leave this one little column here for now. We don't need to use it right now. So next thing we need to do is make our little dome. So Shift A to create, or sorry, to add. And then we're going to go to UV sphere. There's no sphere, just UV sphere. Ooh, that's kind of small. Scale it up. S and drag. I want to say it's about a little bit smaller than it, than the actual old well. Sounds about right. So I'm going to move my side view and drag this up. Oh, now I can't see my column anymore. Well, what should I do? How do I know where to stop dragging my sphere upwards? Well, Blender has this really cool button right here called the X-ray vision. You can either click here on this, or you can just use the hotkey Alt-Z. Now, Alt-Z helps a lot for you to see inside. So I'm just going to able to see the column now inside my sphere, and I'm just going to press G on the sphere, Z, and drag it upwards about where this line, this edge of the sphere intersects with the column. It's about right. So the problem now is we have all of this sphere, and I only really need, this top half of it. So how do I delete this bottom half of it, right? So what we're gonna do now is go into this, and you already seen it because I pressed it by accident, but you're gonna go into this edit mode. So right now, Blender's in object mode, which allows you to click on different objects on your scene and toggle them. What we're gonna go into is edit mode now. So I'm gonna click on the sphere here, go back into X-ray vision, click on the sphere. I'm gonna press tab on my keyboard. So if you press tab on your keyboard, you get all of these lot of orange lines and dots and a lot of information. It's really confusing and it's bothering me. Nah, don't worry, we're gonna make it easy. So go into side view, press Alt and scroll. And now you can see that this sphere is composed of several little dots that we call vertices. So let's get out of X-ray vision to make it simple. So each of these dots is a vertex, plural vertice. And between each vertex, we're going to brush up on geometry a little bit here, but between each vertex, we create an edge. So you can go from vertex mode that shows you all the vertices, pressing 1. And if you press 2 on your keyboard, you go into vertex mode, and you can select each edge independently here. Now, if you have 4 edges that are connected together, they form a face, which conveniently you can select by pressing 3 on your keyboard and going into face mode. So again, 1 for vertex, and 2 vertex form number 2 edges, and the edges form a 3 face. So 1, 2, 3 on your keyboard is vertex, edge, and face. So what we're going to do is select all of these bottom faces right here. So I'm just going to drag my mouse all over these. And you see it's kind of annoying to select these because you can't really grab all at once. You could probably just go around the object, just box select, then press and hold shift, and box select, and press and hold shift, and box select again, and check if you see I didn't grab this one down there, so like this one right here. That's kind of annoying. What we're going to do is a lot more simple. Go into side view here. Now scroll in your mouse and press Alt Z to go into X-ray vision. Now you see all these little dots. Each of these represent a face. But now you can just box all of this in. And now you selected everything. Because you're using X-ray vision, you can see inside and outside of the object. It also allows you to select faces that are behind other faces. So if you're not using X-ray vision and you box select, you only grab half of the sphere, which can be useful in some situations. But if you press Alt Z, go into X-ray vision and drag, you grab everything. So now we're going to delete this side, like all of these faces. So we're going to press X on the keyboard and delete faces. Oh, so now if you leave your X-ray vision, Alt Z again, you see you have this massive gap in the bottom part of the sphere. That's because every object in Blender doesn't really have an interior, it's only an exterior mesh, what we call it. So you just have the surface of an object. So we need to create a little, interior for this. Now there's a lot of ways you can do this, I mean a lot of ways. We're just going to make it very simple. So don't leave edit mode. So if you're able to see and select individual faces, that means you're in edit mode. If you're not and you see this orange outliner, that means you're not. You're in object mode. So you just want to press tab once and be able to select individual faces. Now you're going to press 2 to go into edge select. You're going to hold Alt on your keyboard and you're going to press on the bottom edge here. And you're going to see this orange outliner that shows you selected all of this loop that we call. So a bunch of edges kind of connected together are called a loop. And you're going to press F on your keyboard, not to pay respects, but to actually just fill. So you press F and then you have filled your bottom of your dome. Yay! Now you have the dome, the cylinder, so the column, and the 2 base cylinders. This is pretty old wellish to me. So last thing we're going to do, and that's a little bit more complicated, so you're going to have to follow along a little bit, but we're going to make all of these all of these columns go around the old well. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to duplicate this column once. Wait, actually, before that, you can look at your outliers. They're getting a little bit complicated here. So you have like cylinder, cylinder 1, cylinder 2, sphere. This is kind of weird to work with. And I'm kind of organized in some sense. Not really, but we're trying here. So I'm going to rename all of these. So if you press F2 on your keyboard, function 2, you'll have an object name pop up on your window. Basically, you can rename your object. So I'm going to call this one base underline 1 and press enter. You can see the name has changed and it's this bottom one. I'm going to grab the smaller one here, F2 again, base underline 2. I'm going to click on this column here, call it column underline 1, and click on the dome and call it dome. There we go, that's more organized. So what we're going to do now is click on the column here, and we're going to duplicate it using the Shift D command, and press enter. So we're going to create column 1001. Now, if you try moving this, we can just try to move this and put it here, and use the Shift Z and try to spitball where it's going to be. Nah. So we're going to go back here. We're going to click on the column. We're going to press Control A. So I think it's probably easier to explain what these options are. So if you click on the column and you click on this little arrow here right next to the orthograph, we're going to click here and go to Item. You're going to see these transform commands here. You can also press N on your keyboard to pull this pop-up menu up, which is a lot easier to be honest. But you have here location. So it's a location of your column, the rotation of it, so you can rotate it on the x-axis, etc. And its scale, which is 1, 1, and 1.7 right now, alongside its actual dimensions. About 7 meters tall. That's a bit too big, isn't it? I think 5 meters should be fine. Oh well, let's leave it like that for now. So what you want to do right now is, our big problem is that if you duplicate this column, it's really hard to make it rotate around that little point, that little middle of the scene. So what we're going to do is we're going to reset where this column is. So you can see this cursor right here, which is called a 3D cursor, this little Waldo looking cursor here in the middle. Basically this means is wherever this is where you'll create the objects on your scene, and it's where your camera will rotate around when you're using your middle mouse button. Now, everything we rotate is around this point, except your objects. Your objects usually rotate around their centers. So what we're going to do now is make the center of this object that point. So we're going to press Control A on the keyboard and apply the location of our object. So now this 0 for our column is actually here on the side. It's really weird, but you'll get what I'm saying because I am going to grab this column before it. So if I duplicate this column right here, and I don't even need to duplicate it, I'm sorry. If I just rotate this column on Z, it'll rotate alongside itself because its middle ground, its point of origin, represented by this orange little dot here, is right in its middle center of gravity here, its center of mass. So it's in the middle of the object. Now, if you reset its location, you can see the orange dot move from here to here. So it resets the location of this object, its origin point, to be the center of the actual plane, the actual 3D view. So now if I rotate this object on Z, it rotates around that point. This is insanely useful to do a bunch of different things, honestly, but I've used this so much to just create different kinds of effects and rotations on my objects, and I've learned only recently how to do that, which changed my life. So I'm going to add that there. I'm going to shift duplicate this column and then rotate it on Z. And you can actually type in your keyboard exactly the number you want to rotate. So I'm using 6 columns on a circle, which is 360 degrees. 360 divided by 6 is 60. So I'm going to rotate the column on Z by 60 degrees. There you go. So once again, I'm gonna go back, Shift deduplicate the column, press Enter to keep it there, R to rotate on the Z axis 60 degrees. And I'm gonna repeat the process a little bit. So Shift D, R, Z, 60. Shift D, R, Z, Shift D, R, Z, Shift D, R, Z. Boom. And there is your old wall. Simple, cute, easy. Yeah. Um, since we have some time and this didn't take us long, let's make it a little quick and just paint the old wall according to its color, shall we? So to paint this, we're going to use the properties window on the side here. So what we want to do is we're going to select the bottom base here and then shift select the other one. So you're going to see this orange glow on the previous selected and this more orange yellowy one for the currently selected one. This means both of these are selected. You can also just come to the outlier here and click on one and then shift click on the other. Same effect. Uh, shift and click and control click, all the same. So select both of these, make sure you have them both selected. And here on your properties panel, you're going to come to this circle, sphere-ish looking thing, red and pink, black and pink, I don't know, colors. Colors are hard. But right here, you're going to click on it, and you're going to have this material tab. So this is called the material properties. And then you're going to come into this material tab and click new. And this is a lot of stuff, yes. But the good part is we're only going to use a little bit of it. So you're going to click on base color here, and we're going to change it to, I want to say a little grayish blue. That sounds about right. If you look at the picture a little bit, it's kind of like a granite color. We can't really do the granite texture without spending a lot of time on it, but yeah, sounds about right for now. Well, if you look at your scene, it hasn't really changed. It's still this gray, ugly looking thing. That's because you're looking at the object at the viewport shading. I'm going to close the end menu here. Now, Blender has four types of viewports. That is exactly how you see your scene. The first one here is the wire edge. So it shows you all of the properties, all of this wireframe view of your scene. It's really useful when you have a bunch of objects. It can really show you like what you have on your scene, doesn't get you too lost. The second one is the standard solid mode, which is the one we've been using so far. It's really good because you can just go around your scene. It doesn't eat your computer's memory or anything. And it helps a lot because it's really low consumption, so you can just look at your scene really easily. The third one is called Material Preview. And as the name says, it will show you the material on your scene. So I'm going to click on that. And oh, you look at that. Now everything is white, but my little base here is blue. So what we're going to do is the same thing. If you just come here to your base color and change it, you can see it changes in real time. Well, I just want that to stay blue. So I'm going to click on the second one here. So you'll see the first one, base 1, has a color. Base 2 doesn't. So I'm just going to hit, instead of hitting new here, I'm going to hit the plus arrow. And then I'm going to select this little cube, little globe here, and click on the blue material. There we go. Now it looks pretty. Now we're going to do the same thing for the columns that we did for base 1. So select all of these columns. There we go. And now we're going to actually create a new material. So new. And I want to say a little bit grayish, but not too gray. Yeah, it sounds about right. So I'm just going to copy this new material to all of the columns. Now see, here we have the same problem we had before. That is, all of our materials just have generic names, material 1, materials 2, etc. We're going to name these. So this one is for the column. So I'm going to call this column. The other one, material normal, is just the base. So I'm just going to call this the granite base. And now, last thing we have left, dome. So new dome. And that's a bit more greenish, right? A little bit of a faded green, I think, darker. Looks about right. And there you go, your very own old well with color and everything. Now if you think this is too, low quality, you want to improve this a little bit, I'm just gonna hide the cameras here and the lights so I can select stuff. You can grab all of these, so just make sure you're in object mode, not edit mode, object mode, box select everything. Right click with your mouse and hit shade smooth. Ooh, smooth. Now, shade smooth helps you see how the object should be if it's more, textured and looks a bit nicer. Shade flat keeps it on low poly mode, which makes it a little bit more blocky, but it's also a lot easier to, see how your object is being created, etc., etc. But yeah, this is how you make a little old well inside Blender. Hope this was useful for you guys, and you all staying safe during quarantine. And that's it. See you guys next time.